Hi, everybody. Got a few more joining in.
How many do we have signed up today?
We have 41 today, and it looks like they're just about all in.
Okay.
Some people are still getting their audio connected. Hi, Alexa. Hi, NJ.
So just because of timing, I think the best thing would be to go ahead and just once everyone gets kind of situated, we get as many people on. Let's go ahead and break out and then start with introduce Jad, who they all know, which is great. But some may not, if we have some mapers on there. So would love to for Jad to introduce himself, and then we can get started. What time is it? 12:04. Yeah, let's do that. So let's break. Are all the people who were taking the assessment, are they on?
So I'm going to call your name right now so that you can look out for the breakout invitation. The names are going to go in this order: Ines Hassan, Maya Solonaro, Aaron Marshall, Ayashanti Green, Brian Lazama, Jolid Fernandez, Judy Wong, Katie Mansfield, Kristen Wong, Linda Lee, Makeda Beckwood, Rebecca Nee, Sydney, Sam Herridges, and Muhammad Mehdi. Yep.
Maya, I will text you when we're done just to do a quick time check.
Awesome. Sounds great. I'm going to start adding them all into the breakout room.
Thank you.
In the meantime, Jad, you can go ahead and take it away. So you guys all know who Jad is, the program manager of the Growth Initiative. And for those of you who have not met him, Jad is the program manager of the Growth Initiative. And he works up closely with all of you interns. And he's going to talk to you today about his experiences coming through and working with you all. So take it away, Jad.
Awesome. We good to go, Maya?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, everyone. I'm not sure if y'all are surprised to see me on this call today or you're expected it or not, but here I am again. I wanted to come on like one of the virtual lunch and learn talks because I kind of like want to do a little mini workshop, mini like group exercise thing in regards to navigating and communication in the workspace. So I think most of you already like know about me, my professional experience, where I worked, what I've done, you know, how I ventured my career in advertising and in media in general. And for those who are new here, I think we have like Maya, do we have people who are like non-GIs as well? So I can make sure that like I introduce myself.
We have about 3 Mapers on with us today.
Okay, no problem. So I think I'm going to be introducing myself as I'm going to be sharing my screen. So let me start really quick by sharing. All right, there we go. Can everyone see my screen? And all right, perfect. So yeah, today's session is really about strength and resilience. I'm going to be talking to you guys about like my personal experience of how I've navigated spaces in the work field, working in media, public relations, and advertising in different kind of companies, from small agencies to big agencies, you know, working with multiple clients, but most importantly, working with people from multiple backgrounds and different backgrounds, and now how I had to navigate that space. And I really want to focus on the idea of, you know, the test that I gave to you all, which is the intelligence test, to understand your natural skills and understand what you're naturally good at and how do you use those skills to navigate these spaces. So I've broken down the session into 5 points. First, we're going to talk about understanding your personal intelligence, so your natural skill set. What do you naturally tend to do when you're working on a project? And we're going to do a mini quiz, a mini exercise, breaking down to each and every single one of you, so you see how you navigate a certain project. How do you use your skills when you're applying to jobs? So when you're looking at job requirements, what are certain key terms that you resonate with that make you feel comfortable to apply to certain jobs? Then we're going to be moving on to communication. How do you communicate with people via email, via video calls, via face-to-face, and all of that? And it's not really in terms of like how do we communicate, but what are some things we have to take into consideration when we communicate so you don't feel like your voice is not being heard. The main purpose of this talk is for you guys to navigate and these workspaces and have a voice and be heard and not be submissive to the workforce and not be intimidated by the media industry and the landscape and how everything is, because I understand that nowadays, you know and I was your age, when I was like in my early 20s, being scared, um wanting to be approved or have validation in a company to show my skill set, and wanting maybe sometimes to impress people, and then starting to realize that all of that doesn't really matter as long as I make sure that who I am is visible, because who I am will take me to where I need to be. So this is just like a little mini color. As you can tell, I'm very bad at presentations, by the way. I'm so bad in terms of like designing, showing a presentation. My visual intelligence is so low. But this is just to show you a little bit about like things that I've done aside from my career. Uh, as you all know, I was born in Lebanon. My mom is Lebanese. My dad is Haitian and Palestinian. So I've always had like a very weird understanding of like the multicultural world and what does it mean to be mixed, and the idea that you guys have here like in America of like being mixed. For me, like I've never had that idea. Like I've never knew that I was a person of color. First of all, we didn't have that. If you go to Lebanon, we all look very different, from like white to brown to Mediterranean or like Latino looking or however it is, but we don't have the idea of color. So we never grew up around that factor. And we were always like caught in a bubble. So I've navigated, different advertising agencies, all of that, trying to understand like what it means to be me, which is why I traveled to New York and I graduated from the New School. Um, and I've surrounded myself by people from different backgrounds. So the picture that you see here is like me and my friends. I just want to show it, just to show you guys like how in a matter of like just like 2 years, I've been surrounded by people from different backgrounds and I've learned so much from them. And that, for me, I've taken that ideology and that passion of being into multicultural into my work. So I produced a film called Once Upon a Color, which is a musical documentary about people of color and artists of color in New York City and how they navigate white spaces. And I've also given a lecture at NYU about indigenous narratives, which is about how to use digital media platforms to narrate our stories as people of color. And that has always been my passion. And I'm taking that everywhere I go in my full-time job right now as an adjunct professor and in this program. So let's talk about your natural intelligence traits, okay? And now I know maybe some of you are like, oh my God, this again. Some of you may not have liked it, some of you may have liked it, but I really want to highlight the fact that you really have to understand what you're good at and not disclaim it or like, go away from it. It's not about you being good at design. It's not about you being good at writing. It's about you, what do you naturally do when you work on a project, okay? Or when you work on something. Let's suppose, for example, you guys are taking on a social media position, all right? And the social media position requires you to do a content calendar, all right? A person who has high musical intelligence may have a hard time doing it, may have to rely on like hearing things around them to work on this content calendar because that's how naturally they navigate. A person with high logical intelligence, which you can see here, Logic Smart, may have to do calculations, have to schedule specific timings and understand what time, where, how do I do that? You know, a person with maybe verbal intelligence is all about writing. They start writing right away. They don't think about the logic of it. They don't think about, like hearing things. They start writing the calendar and then they try to implement it. So that doesn't mean that different people will be um, will have, will be suitable for that job. It's just that like you tackle a job based on your natural intelligence. So I'm pretty sure all of you have taken that, and I've seen a lot of you had like high musical intelligence, high interpersonal intelligence. Personally, for me, as you know, I'm very high on like music, audio, interpersonal, people to people, and kinesthetic because I move around a lot with my body. So let's get to it right away. I want to do a quiz. All right. So and I'm gonna choose 5 of you to see what answers you got. McDonald's is looking to promote their new McFlurry peanut butter and chocolate campaign, okay, through a 30-second social video on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram stories. The timeline is from July 1st, 2020 until August 31st, 2020. So that's 2 months. The plan is to have 2 spots per week on each platform twice a month throughout that whole period. So you are the official agency responsible and you want to present the pricing for this client. All right. So basically you're the media planners. Here's the rate sheet. Here are the amounts per spot. I want you guys to take like 3 minutes maybe. And the first person who gets the answer, first 4 person, please like write down your name and let me know. All right. And then we're going to talk about the process of how you got to these numbers. So just take 3 minutes. And again, there's no right or wrong. If you didn't get it right away, that's totally fine. We're just doing this quiz so we can like prove a point about natural intelligence. All right, go. Take 3 minutes. And I'm going to open my chat. Chat. All right. And even if the answer is wrong, that's totally fine. All right. But when you're confident to present something to me, let's suppose I am the client, let me know, type in your name, and then I'll call you out. All right, we got Zach, 1. I need 2 more people. Again, it doesn't have to be the right answer. Maya, just a quick note from Anthony. Some of us got put in a breakout room by accident. They missed this part of the presentation. I think it's a technical thing.
Yeah, we got them all back. They just
Okay.
might have missed
No
the beginning of the
problem, no
question.
problem. I don't want the answer. Gretel, I do not want the answer on the chat, just so you know. So I just want you to call out your name. So I have Zach. I'll take Gretel too. And Tanisha. All right, fine. We're gonna go with those. Okay, Zach, tell me, what are you presenting to me?
Okay, so after I actually sent in that I have an answer, I started calculating some more. I was like, oh, I think I have it wrong. But the way I kind of presented the rate, I guess I tried to do it like a math equation. So well, first I just had to get the general rates. So with the $50 YouTube, 40 Facebook, and 30 for IG. So I represented that by 50Y plus 40F plus 3I plus the labor will equal, I guess, the campaign. But then I kind of started thinking about it different. I was like, oh, well, there's the other factors about like the, there's only 8 weeks in the program. And I think they want 16 pieces of content in total. So that includes 128. So I guess Y plus F plus I equals 120. I started to go down this route, but the more I kept looking at it, the more I kept thinking about it. So
Okay. All right, I see. So did you feel like the process of doing calculations was like a little bit forced, or did you feel like you just clicked right away to do it?
Once I kind of saw that, that all they wanted to use all of the platforms, I kind of knew that I had to include all of those numbers into the rate somehow. But then I think I just maybe didn't have the full time to calculate.
Okay, no worries, no problem.
But I knew I had to include it in spot, so.
Good. All right, Gretel, how about you?
Okay, I can't tell if I did this wrong, but I basically just since it's 2 a week, I just added the rate times 2, and then I got $2.40 per week. And since it's for a month, so it's 2 weeks a month, right? And so I got $9.60 because $4.80 per month. But also,
Okay.
I didn't know we were supposed to add other things.
No worries. But how did you feel about that process? How did you feel about calculating and all of that?
I was stressed out, but I was trying to do the best I could.
Okay, no worries. Tanisha, how about you?
Yeah, the more answers I hear, the more I'm confused.
Okay, no worries.
This is right, but first thing I did was I grabbed some paper right next to me. I wrote down the time and I opened up Google Calendar to count the weeks. And I think I counted 9 weeks, and then I realized it mentioned 2 spots per week, only twice a month. So then I wrote down 50, 40, and 30 and multiplied it by 4. And then I added those and I got 480.
I see. Well, my question is, did you enjoy doing that, or did you feel
kind of in between. It wasn't terrible, but math isn't my forte, especially
it's
not
fine.
on the spot.
It's fine. It's most of us it isn't. No, most of us we don't really like math. But so the point is that experience right now, for example, Zach, you took on out of the 3 of you took on a more of a logical route and everything, but then along the way you started thinking about other things like the whole program and everything and how it comes to be, but then you were not in your mood to do it. Gretel, at the same time, you just didn't really enjoy it that much. It kind of maybe stressed you out a little bit. Tanisha, you took a pen and paper and you started writing again on it. So the 3 of you had different processes. That doesn't mean that you guys are not smart or anything. It just means that, you guys take on a different route to take on a logical test. Maybe some people would like to draw the calendar. So Tanisha, maybe you have to draw the calendar in front of you, see it visually, which means you have to rely on your visual intelligence, for example, to do a calculation. So these are just some things for you to think about whenever you're doing a job and you know that you have budgeting as a task for one of those job offers. Will you feel comfortable doing the budgeting? Or maybe you have to learn to do them, but using a different natural intelligence trait that you have. So for example, for me in my job, I do a lot of budgeting, and I don't have a high logical intelligence. So what I do honestly is I come to a calculation, and then when I see a lot of numbers, I just round them up right away to 3,000 or 250. Sometimes I just say what's on my mind because I just can't do the calculation. So I have to use different things. So when I'm talking to clients, I'll be are you comfortable with $3,000 as a budget? And they're like, yeah, okay, great, then we'll go with that. And I didn't even do calculations. I shouldn't be saying these things, because kind of cheating. But at the same time, budgeting is not my thing. Calculations are my thing because usually I don't go with my logical route. So it really depends on how you guys navigate these things, So take that into consideration when you're applying to jobs. Does budgeting and pricing is something that you're going to be comfortable with? All right. For time's sake, I'm not going to go through the second one. These are some things for you to consider when you are, I'm sorry, hold up. When you understand your intelligence levels and when you're applying to jobs. So logical is all about budgeting, research, strategies, coding. It's really equation based. When you know that you can quickly get an answer right away, you can tell that you have high logical intelligence. Natural is all about environment, outdoor activity, urban and landscape. I know some of you, for example, enjoy the outdoors. Some of you enjoy skateboarding. Some of you like to be one with the world and everything. And they naturally gravitate towards that. Visual is more about design, photography, and big picture. So, You like to see things as they are. You like to visualize things. Musical is not necessarily music. It's really about listening. It's about vocal power and adapting to sound. Hearing things make you navigate a job better. Body is all about movement. It's stage presence. It's physical presence. Some of you who have high body intelligence just like to be present in a room. They like their physical presence to be dominant in that room. So again, when you are working in a job or when you are applying to a job or a certain position, you're going to have to see when you're in the interview process, and let's suppose you have high body intelligence, ask yourself, will I be able to be physically present in that job? Will I be able to be present there and have a lot of motion? Because that's how I know that I'll perform to my best. So this is something to think about. Social is, it is what it is. It's people management, communication. It's more for leaders, supervisors. It's really dealing with people and understanding that you will do best when you're with people. Self and intra is really about self-reflection, having conversations with yourselves. You know, linguistic is really using your words. It's really a lot of typing, a lot of formulating. So linguistic people are really good with languages. They're really good with formulating their sentences. So also maybe that has a lot to do with jobs that require a lot of writing or a lot of like formulation and pronunciation. So think about those. Now, let's take, for example, this is a public relations job, okay? So these are the requirements for a job. You're reading through these jobs and you know what you're good at and you know what your high intelligence level is. Let's go through them. Okay, you need a bachelor's degree, 3 to 5 years of relevant experience, fluent in Spanish. You can already tell that being fluent in a second language, if you are and you're not a native Spanish speaker, but you are fluent in Spanish, most likely you have high linguistic intelligence. So use that to your advantage. Consumer product and tech industry experience. So when you see tech, automatically you have to know that you're going to be dealing with, you know, a lot of logical, rational routes in terms of like coding, how the tech industry works. So that has to do a lot with like logical intelligence. You know, like when I see that, I would like step away. I don't want to work in tech. I would not. I would know for a fact that this is not a position for me because I'm not interested in tech. You know, so outstanding interpersonal skills, which means social, you have to be really good with people, excellent oral and written skills, which is linguistic. So you have to understand that. Um, so this job requires you to travel, which also requires like body intelligence. Some of you are not comfortable with going from one place to another to meet clients, for example, or to go to conference calls. So people with low body intelligence, for example, will not be comfortable with that. They will be put in an uncomfortable situation. They may have to work a lot on that. So maybe this is something that is good for you if you have high body intelligence, because you'll feel comfortable traveling from one place to another, going to a conference call that will motivate you and that will help you excel and be the best at this job. So these are some things to consider whenever you're looking at like um, job positions or job requirements. In terms of communication, when you're sending an email to an HR person or when you're contacting someone or when you're trying to connect with someone, first things first, I will say to you, please don't be shy. Don't be shy at all. You don't have to think about what will they think about me. Let go of the factor of like, what will people think about me if I say this, if I say this sentence, or if I say this word. We're always navigating a space, whether we're working or whether we're applying to jobs of like, I'm a little bit self-conscious about this. I don't want to say this. Say what's on your mind, but always be respectful and formulate well your sentences. Avoid excessive joking or writing funny. This is usually in emails. And I'm talking this in any kind of scenario, whether you're having an interview with an HR person or the hiring manager, or when you're having a call with someone, or when you are having a call with your colleagues. So this is pre-job application, after post-job application. This applies to everything. Cursing is not necessary, honestly. Like saying words like shit and fuck and whatever and all of that. I would personally say avoid those unless you are at a very comfortable level with your colleagues, you know, and that's usually not pre-job application. This is post job application. So when you're actually working at a company and you've been working there for a while. So it really depends on you, but even if you're comfortable with the setting, my suggestion, do not use profane words at all. Just avoid them completely. There's no need for them. And there's no need to imitate email culture. So if you notice that there's a trend in email culture, like per my last email, as I said, not to jump off your point or all these things, you know, You don't have to feel like you need to imitate that, because that doesn't mean that you're like not following anything. That just means that like you're following a trend of things, and you're you're just like, tapping along what everyone is saying, but just write how you feel. But again, remembering to be respectful and formulating well your sentences. So don't feel intimidated by how email culture is and having to use that word and everything. Be the one to generate the conversation to keep the work going. So whatever you're applying to a job, or you want to connect with someone on LinkedIn, you be the one to initiate everything. When you're working on something, don't necessarily be the follower. I know sometimes this can be a little bit difficult for people who are maybe like introverted or don't like to take the lead, but again, just try it. Try to lead a conversation of something if you have an interest in it. Like, let's suppose you have an idea for a campaign. You are a graphic designer at a corporate American company, and you know that you want to do something with this client, and you're the graphic designer. You have like a very low position, for example. Write an email, send it to the supervisor. You have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose. Like, hey, I was thinking for McDonald's, why don't we do this initiative? And here's a plan, here it is. What do you think about it? So go ahead, send it. Send that email. Do not be intimidated by the hierarchy of the work or by your position itself. Start off conversations, especially right now, because you have to be visible. People need to see you and see how you're doing. Do not follow along. If you feel like there's something that you need to put into a company, you feel like you can add a lot of value, go ahead and write it. Always remember, you have nothing to lose at all. Nothing to lose if you're being proactive. Nothing to lose if you have ideas. Nothing to lose if you're asking a question. Asking questions is very important, not for the sake of just asking them, but also for because you're curious, you're intrigued, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you have a lot of questions when you start off a new job, or when you're doing an interview with an HR person. It's not always you waiting for them to let you know if it's yes or no answer. Maybe you have a question like, oh, you have an interview with Facebook for a social media position, and then the interview's over. What if like, oh shit, I have a question regarding that. Like, hey, out of curiosity, like, how are your algorithms changing right now? I was just curious about that. If you really have the interest, maybe for your own personal things, and you're not trying to impress them, but maybe you just want to know something, go ahead and ask them, you know? All right, so we're gonna move on to the next. Now, when it comes to navigating people, let's talk about the barriers. There's a lot of language barriers, for sure, stereotype barriers, personality, cultural, and accent barriers. For me, someone who has worked in Dubai, Saudi Arabia, and Lebanon in high corporate companies, like very corporate companies, and the mentality is, a lot of Lebanese people work in Saudi Arabia and Dubai and in the Middle East. We have our very own mentality in the Middle Eastern world, like when it comes to agencies and everything. So I come from a culture where, a boss can get out of the room and yell at their employees if a campaign didn't work out well. And we would like clash, like we're very expressive and we're very oral. And that's part of our culture in the Middle East. So we don't really hide behind emails. We're very vocal about things. If we're annoyed with someone, like, I don't want to work with you, straight up, like we're ready to throw hands. Was just a culture that we've had. Coming to America, well, I can't do that at all. So right now, I work at a company, and like, if I tell you how much I have to tame myself down working with my environment, and let's face it, you're all going to be working with white people. There's no avoiding that. You're all going to be working with white people. So know that for a fact. No matter where it's very diverse, a company, whatever, you're all going to be working with white people. And I'm not talking about like white people like your friends or anything. I'm talking about like white American men and women who have high positions in corporate companies, who intimidate all of you young, black, brown, white, Asian, people of color, no matter what race you're from, no matter what culture you're from, you're young, you're penetrating the industry. They want to intimidate you, and that's their mentality, and that's how it is. So you have to understand that all these barriers are going to be there, and you have to acknowledge them, that they are there. But you also have to look at what are the common things that you will have when working with people who are at a certain hierarchy. Think about mutual interests. Think about, like humor, things that bring you together. Will this person make me feel comfortable when I work on some things? Openness. Also, the idea of learning from each other, but the most important thing is the work. Understand that when you are navigating a space, you're walking into a company, it don't matter if you are the only black person in an all white company. The most important thing is like, I am here to do my work and I'm good at it. And I'm the best at it actually. So I'm here to do my job and then I'm bouncing, clocking in at night, clocking out at 6. Now, you have to always understand that like there are levels of respect and everything, and now everything that's going on, of course you have to take a stand if someone disrespects you given your culture and your background. But if you're just like not getting along with them simply because you don't identify with their humor or their interests, that's fine. That's totally fine. These are not your friends. The company where you work at, they don't have to be your friends. They don't have to be your friends. I go to my company, I work, I'm surrounded by a lot of white people. I work with them, we do the job right. All I'm focusing about is like, I want to make sure that I'm doing the job right for me because I know I'm good at it. And after 6, I go turn up with my friends, totally different vibe. Friendship and company culture, two different things. They don't have to intersect. You don't have to think about like, oh, I want to work at a company where everybody is chill and laid back. No, screw that. No, you're here to work. You're here to work, do your job, and you're good at it. So when you get a job offer, understand that I got this job because I'm good at what I do. And I know I'm good at what I do, and nobody else can tell me that I'm not good at what I do. And I'm going to learn from the people around me, but I'm also going to teach them. So have a mentality of a two-way learning stream. All right? The most important thing is to adapt. Adapting is what it's all about. It didn't take me a lot of while to adapt, but because I knew that I had to adapt right away from the moment I had an interview with my company right now. Like I have to adapt every day of my life. In a moment where I show a little bit of aggression in my email, like highlighting something in red or like underlining and saying like, I need this today, client is waiting. I get an email from my boss like, hey, so this email was a little bit aggressive. And I'm like, really? Like, really? This email was aggressive? Like, she has not seen anything. And if I tell you how much I have to tame down, because again, I come from a culture where we shout at each other at a company, but we do amazing work. It's a company culture, but coming here, like I had to adapt. And adapting is challenging every day. Even when working from home, I have to adapt. When I'm phone calls, I have to adapt. Sometimes I like let out a little joke. Like I've been working at this company for almost a year and 8 months, and I let out a little joke and nobody laughs. I'm like, oh my God, wow, this is a lot. Like, okay, shit, I have to adapt to that as well. Like, it's difficult. It's not easy. It's really, really, really not easy. So here's a quick quiz, and I'm gonna call out some people. Okay, so you're working and you sent pricing to your client, okay? Your supervisor sends you an email. You shouldn't be sending prices to client without my consent first. All right, so is Richard on the line? Richard?
Yeah, I am on the line.
All right, what would be your response?
Uh, well, first I would apologize about not clearing it with him first, and then I would ask him, and like for future references, what would you want me to do in a case like this when it comes to reviewing prices? What would you want me to go over with you? And then I would go about sending it to the email from him, or like just making sure I go through all the steps I have to go through before I get to the client. So that's
Excellent. Perfect. Perfect. So when it comes to apologizing, you don't have to say like, I'm sorry, oh my God, whatever. Apologies, point, that's it. How would you like us to proceed next time? So exactly as you said. So asking for future steps. How do we proceed? Don't be too apologetic. Just say apologies. That's it. Point. You don't have to be submissive to them. Everybody makes mistakes. We're all learning. So always understand that if you get an email where someone tells you that you messed up, don't think of it as you messed up. Like, oh, it's a mistake. Sorry. How can you proceed next time? And that's it. Carry on.
Got it.
So that's a really good answer. Yes.
Is it a bad idea to like explain your reasoning if you get like in trouble? Like, would it just be superfluous to explain your reasoning? Is it better to just like ask for a solution?
Absolutely. Ask for solutions. In that situation, if you have a reason to do that, make it very short. Like for apologies, I thought I was at a level where, I can send the pricing right now, but how would you like to take on the future steps in regards to this? Absolutely. Make it very short. Do not go into a full description of like why you're apologizing or why you did that. Make everything short, make everything quick. All right? Don't let your supervisors dominate you. Don't let them eat you up, no matter at what stage you are. Do not be submissive to them. And how you do that? Be very short and simple. Okay, sorry. How would you like to proceed with this? There we go. Move on, move on. Always think about like carry on to the next step, next step, next step. Let me not be apologetic. Let me carry on with this. All right?
Jad, how long it took you to get this mindset, or you were always like that?
Before I move on to the next one, that's a good question. Again, if somebody has any questions, please interrupt me right away. Um, you know what, Olga? I think by working with so many people in people-facing jobs, client-facing jobs, and understanding, how people work and how people navigate everything, came I realized that there are patterns, and there are patterns with different set of people. So I've worked with a lot of like white American corporate people, men and women, who have the same mentality. So I realized the pattern, which is why I made my own finding based on that. I've worked with a lot of Lebanese people, with a lot of Emiratis people who are creatives and executives, and working with creatives is a different thing when working with people who are people management roles. Like working with creatives, for example, like I have to chase them around. They don't care about the deadlines or anything sometimes. Like they're very maybe laid back, everything. They care about the arts. And me, someone who's like cares about, having a relationship with the client, like I had to navigate that space. So it's really experience, but also at the same time, the more people that I worked with and the more that I started pinpointing the patterns, the more I started comfortable with these findings. Does that answer your question?
So it's fine if you like in a super low level, you just got accepted to the company and you'll be answering like that. It doesn't create any, because you don't want to ruin relationships with your manager and you don't know how, like, you don't know them yet. So it's kind of hard to navigate that in that
Absolutely.
space.
And I will tell you this, and based on like one presentation, I'm not telling you to attack or like to defend yourself or like to go against them. I'm just telling you, keep it short, keep it quick, keep it simple. And that's it. But do not be submissive and too apologetic. Do not go into a submission of that. You don't need that for you nor for them. You need to show that you're like, oh, okay, little mistake. How do we proceed? And because they want to see how you improve. They want to see how you're like, oh, you're adapting to it and everything. They don't want to see you being apologetic, like it's my fault, I didn't mean to, and everything. That's what I'm telling you. Like, you don't have to show submission, but you have to show how you're fixing the issue, quote unquote. You know?
Got it. Yep. Thank you. Helpful.
No
So,
problem.
Jad, I have a question.
Yes.
So you said that that they want to see how you adapt. So let's say you send the email, and like you said before, somebody says, "Oh, you sound angry, or you're being rude, or something." Do you change the way you speak in your email to that person?
Absolutely, definitely. So, again, you have to understand, this is the workforce, this is the workplace. If my supervisor's comment was like, uh, I think first things first is to ask, how was it aggressive? If you don't mind me asking, I would like to know. Do not get defensive. As I'm like, you might think like, I don't see that my email is aggressive, but you know what? I'm not gonna combat this. I'm not gonna be combative. I'm just gonna ask, where exactly in my email was I aggressive, if you don't mind me asking? And then they should give you, if they're reasonable people, like luckily my supervisor is, they're like, like underlining in red and saying needing this ASAP. I'm like, okay, how about this? Refix your email and send it to them. I know it's a very annoying, tedious response. I mean, if it were up to me, I would be like, if it were really up to me, I would be like, I'm gonna write however I want to write because I want to get the job done, and you're just being pretentious. But because we are adapting to the culture, asking questions and showing results is key.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
always key. Always key. So ask a question. I'm like, okay, so I refixed it. What do you think about this email? And let me tell you something. White people love that shit. I'm gonna use a word. They love that. They get a hard on that. They just love that. I don't know why. What is it about it? I don't know, but they just love it. It's like gold and candy to them. So give them what they want.
Got it.
All right. So I need a creative. I need a creative right now for this next quiz. Can anyone type down their names? Art directors. I want a volunteer, please. Put your name in the chat. All right, Victoria. Boom. All right. You are the creative agency and you're the creative director, and you're pitching this campaign. My, what big flavors you have. This is Taco Bell. So this is clearly for Halloween, and this was your idea, and I am the client, and I am Taco Bell. All right, so I want you to pitch this for me. Go ahead, Victoria.
Okay. Hey, Jad, welcome to the meeting. This is what we've come up with. Very colorful and, fun take on the Taco Bell. My, what big flavors you have for treats for this season.
All right,
That's
and may I ask, what are these? Are these supposed to be teeth at the top of the
Yes, they're
bottom?
supposed to have a take on teeth, just a little different, but with our products, of course.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see. And is this a reference to something? The copy?
It could, it could be.
No problem. All right. Well, may I ask, what was the thought process behind this? If you don't mind me asking, like, why are we using the teeth, and why are we using this specific product?
Especially for Halloween with people having parties and all of that, we figured why not showcase something that can be shared amongst groups of people. And especially with the chips, I feel like that's something easy to go to, especially if you're having kids over or anything. Certainly they might not necessarily get this quote.
Mm-hmm. All
But
right.
yeah.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Victoria. All right. Well, Victoria, I can tell you from now that you had really good confidence showing that, even though it's on the spot. Like, I know it's a bit difficult to like give you an exercise like this, but as a creative, you showed great confidence. That is really good. And that is number one thing. Even if sometimes like you're not sure about it, showing that you're confident about your work is really good. All right. Now, of course, you might have not known the reference for sure, but like if you had like a little time to exercise, it would be great. But also, you can think on your feet when a client gives you critiques, and also have to understand that like they may ask things of like, what thought process got you through this, and that's up for you to know. Maybe sometimes you want to include like a personal experience or a personal example. You're like, oh, well, I used to watch a little bit of Writing Hood when I was a little girl or something. It doesn't always have to be, like, what would a strategist say, or like what would a creative say in that situation. So, like, well, honestly, personally, that's how it is. So it really, relating it to you and feeling confident of like sharing your experience with it is something that comes out very natural, and something that can come out very comforting when you're in talks with the client, because they don't want to hear you impressing them. They want to hear like, oh, why this idea? Like, you're the creative, so you created this, so why this idea? So understand, something, Victoria, and that goes to all the creatives. And confidence is key. That's number one. Perfect. you know Twisting your words around it, in a meeting is always a good thing, but also you're the creative. So a lot of your emotions, your thought process was into this. So a personal experience into it can come out natural, can always be a good idea, of course, and there's not really a practice for you when you're presenting. It's just about you being confident with your work. So good job. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, so a colleague email from an account manager to a creative. We need the radio script to be done in 30 minutes ASAP. Client has followed up many times. All right. I do need a copywriter. Copywriter. All right, Anthony. Boom. So, Anthony, I'm the account manager and I'm furious, and I'm sending you an email like, we need the radio script right now. The client has followed up many times. Now, knowing that I have given you the brief literally an hour ago, okay? I gave you the brief an hour ago, and I'm telling you I want this next 30 minutes, and I just told you that this is the deadline, what will be your response?
In all honest, my response for that, considering that they needed ASAP, I would do whatever I can on the spot, whatever I think would be, you know, worth to be put on the radio script. Honestly, that's pretty much it. Be shocking that I wouldn't be able to submit it earlier than expected. But anyways, yeah, that's all I can do for now.
Okay, okay, that's really good. Yes, you're
But I
gonna
would
have to
say
manage it.
what the brief was, you know. Take any ideas I had from, you know, past scripts, you know, not saying I'll plagiarize anything, but just to get a good feel, you know, what could help capture an emotional response and stuff like that. And then
Okay,
with my own words, my own, you know, values put in, that's what I would do.
perfect. I will add also one thing, Anthony. Always say, just so you know, this was given an hour ago, so for future references, we need more time to work on the copies. It's not saying that like you're putting them on the spot or you're like blaming them. Avoid blaming, but mention the reasoning in the situation. For future references, this was given an hour ago, and we would need at least 3 hours as per previous projects on this. So again, no submission. Do not submit to anyone. Give reasoning and be very reasonable about it. And tell them that, but do your job at the same time. Don't say like, I'm not gonna do it. Do it. This is what we can do. This is the best that we can do within 30 minutes. For future references, we need more leverage and we need more leadway. So make sure to always tell them to avoid doing something like that and be reasonable about it. All right?
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So we do have to wrap it up for next presentation. I just want to say, if you have any questions to me, you can reach out to me on the side. We can talk about it. Taking this further, I really want you guys to apply everywhere right now. Share your work online, generate conversations, generate communication, tailor your LinkedIn profiles to be visible to the job position that you want. So look at the key terms that you need, okay? Let's see your face. You guys have to be visible out there. So a lot of you are sharing right now that you're with, you know, the GI program and everything. You're taking part of like lectures and everything. Share that, share it, share it. We need to see you online. Be part of an online community. And if you want to generate conversations with people, slide into their DMs on LinkedIn or something, or like send them an email and start the conversation. Now is the time for you to get into the whole online community and be present there. All right? So we're going to move it on to you, Maya. If anybody has any questions, you can reach out to me on the side.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jad. That was a really wonderful presentation. We're going to move on into our next segment, which is the Up Close and Personal with Kai Lawson, the Director of Community Engagement at WPP. And she's going to talk to you guys about curating the community. So Kai, are you on here?
I sure am.
Hi, Kai.
Hey, hi guys. I'm just gonna scroll through. What up, what up, what up? I see 100 roses from concrete. What up, what up, what up? It is quite a few people on here, and I'm gonna start by saying two things so you get to know who I am and what I'm about. So the first thing is I have been working all week, which means that I opted, rather than to give a full presentation for everyone to study and learn, to just kind of sit here and talk and speak with you all. And the second thing is I am probably going to be one of the least buttoned up people, but definitely very real. So that means if y'all got questions while I'm speaking, please feel free to ask them. I'm here for conversation. I'm here for building relationships. I'm here to share. I'm not here to just talk down to folks. So if you've ever been to a Black church or a Latin church, you know very well this is call and response. If you hear something you like, say something in the chat or ask me directly. So I will go ahead and kick off. So like Maya said to you guys, my name is G.R.O.W.T.H Lawson, emphasis on the middle name. My mama gave it to me and it's been doing me very well, named after Dominique Devereaux from Dynasty, for any of you that have ever heard of this decade called the 80s. And I am the global director, I'm at a title update, global director of community engagement for WPP, specifically for our global culture team. This is a very new role for WPP. It's a new role for the industry. And quite frankly, it doesn't mean anything yet because I'm building it as I go along. And luckily, I would say that that is probably the best position for a person like me to be in, given that I have such an extensive career in a whole bunch of things. So to understand community engagement and my perspective on it, I guess it might make sense for me to tell you guys a little bit about my background, where I came from, and kind of how I got stuck with, or blessed, depending on how you look at it, with this extremely large scaling role. So back in the day, I would say like early 2000s, I come from a music background, right? So I never wanted to be in advertising. Not gonna lie to you guys. Back in college, I used to talk a lot of mess about people that studied advertising. I just thought, as just terrible. I just thought that advertising was for people that couldn't get into entertainment. And you know what they say about the secret, or the law of attraction: the things that you oppose so much in your life are always going to be the things that you attract. And so here I am now working in advertising, eating my words every day. But I did get a really good foundation working in the music business. I started off street teaming for a couple of record labels back when I was a teenager, namely Rockefeller Records. So Jay-Z, pre-Beyonce. I was working on passing out CDs, trying to understand, you know, what the streets were saying about new music. For any of you that have ever heard of this guy named Kanye West, I was on the street team for his first album, The College Dropout, before it actually released. I believe that might have been the summer of 2002. We were pushing that. What I loved about working at record labels at the time, and you know, I did street teaming. I was an intern for Sony and Columbia. I worked at some independent labels in Philadelphia. And what I loved about working in music was my access to culture. I loved how I understood that music got people to think a different way. I loved what music encouraged other people to do. And not just the music, because I'm no musician. I can't count scales. I don't know the difference between treble clef and a bass clef. And I know nothing of that. But what I did know is when people heard things that they really liked, it moved them to make action, right? And for me, that's always culture, the experience people have due to the environment around them. So it could be music, it could be poetry, it could be journalism, all of that. So I was just really into that, and went into college. And as I was in college, I became a college representative. I don't know if they still do that anymore, but you know, I would say early 2000s, definitely in the 90s, college reps were huge, primarily for urban music, because that was how the record labels would do a test. So for those of you, I'm not sure how much you've learned about advertising and marketing thus far, but a lot of times we'll do A/B tests. So that A/B test was on the music side was actually done within the college markets, because they felt that the demographic between the ages of 18 to 25 were a lot more flexible with what they would hear to, but with what they would decide to listen to, but would also determine what, or taste make rather, what the hottest new record would be for the season or the year. So while I was doing that, I learned a couple of things. I learned that in order to pass out music and get people on board with what was the dope stuff to listen to, I needed people to know who I was. I needed people to trust me. I needed people to know that I wasn't just putting any old CD at the time in their hand, because we handed out CDs and we would listen to them in cars and things way before iPods. And I also needed to be able to take that information that I acquired from working, what we called working the streets or working the campuses, and bring that back to the record labels that I was working with, to be able to tell them a little bit more about my demographic, and to also help them tailor which artists they would send to the city, what music, you know, the artist should be making, because in this area, primarily at the time it was Washington, D.C., DMV area, this is what people like to hear. And also it would help them choose what kind of artists that they would bring on in the future. I just thought that that was specific to the music industry. I never thought that that would help me in my future. I was just out here to hang out with some musicians, go to the clubs with them, put on some concerts with them, and I literally thought that would be my career for the rest of my life. And boy, was I wrong, to an extent. In addition to doing the street teaming thing, I also used to put on concerts. And I went to Howard University, so I did their Howard University homecoming concert, which was our Yard Fest, which used to be, before COVID, one of the largest events in the Washington, D.C. area. And at the time, back in 2009, I had produced their largest Yard Fest to date. And that was just from channeling a lot of the insight that I had gained from, at that point, about 7 years of working in music, working with artists, working with a community of people to understand what they liked, what they wanted to hear, and how and when they wanted to hear it. And I never thought that that was important information to have, but it ended up serving me well. So I don't know how much of history you guys know, but around 2009, 2010 was the peak of the last recession that we were in. And that was also around the time that I graduated. So when I graduated, I was like, man, none of my friends are getting jobs. None of my cousins are getting jobs. I'm not about to be out here stressing myself out after 5 years. Yes, I said 5 years. I partied very hard. 5 years being in college. I'm just gonna go stay with my aunt and sleep on her couch for a couple months until all of this blows over, because that's what I thought at the time was the best way for me to move forward. And what had happened was, once I graduated, my career center had shared my resume at the time with various businesses, and I ended up getting a call from this place called Wonderman, which I did not know, but now I know. Wonderman is an advertising agency under the WPP network. Like I said, I didn't like advertising. I thought it was whack, but nobody else was getting jobs. And I was like, well, the way Sally Mae is hitting up my phone post-graduation, that's the lady that collects all my money from all the loans that I signed up for. I probably need to start getting some coins together so I could pay her back and still have a meal. So when I went in for the interview, they were like, hey, we see you used to work in music. This is really cool. We got a junior project manager position. Do you want it? And I was like, oh, manager? Of course, I can totally manage people. I'm important. So I ended up taking that job because I thought that being a project manager meant that I was going to be in charge of something. But that's not exactly how that worked out. However, what I did discover once I ended up taking that job were a lot of the transferable skills that I had gathered from working in music, and specifically working on the community side of music that related to how I've done work in advertising. And I'll get to that a little later with my 3 points. Started at Wonderman. I did some time at a spot called Momentum Worldwide. They are an experiential agency and they work a lot in the digital marketing space. At the time, I was still working on print. I don't know if you guys know what that means. That's when we were still making magazines and still had to do like actual posters and things like that. Then I went into working on the tech side for a little bit and learned a lot about coding, building websites, building apps. And this is when, you know, when people thought it was cool to build not just iOS, but you had to build iOS, Android, Google, Microsoft, a whole bunch of apps for a whole bunch of phones. It was a different time. I went on to work in another agency called Space 150. If any of you are familiar with the Midwest, they're based in Minneapolis. That's when I saw somebody give me a whole fist bump. Shout out to the Midwest. That is where I honed in on a lot of my skills. Long story short, ended up having quite a few experiences that, while I feel confident that my work was great, there are a lot of politics and a lot of soft experiences that can taint your experience, I guess, in any business, particularly in advertising, as it pertained to both my race, my age, and my gender. Shout out to Wu-Tang Clan. I'll take a line from them. I got with a sick, tight crew and made a podcast about what my experience was. Basically, what my experience was working in advertising. So at this point, I've been in advertising for about 5 years. And what I learned is, even though I was skilled, even though I have a very diverse background, even though I am very, very into the historical context of this industry, that somehow that wasn't necessarily enough to succeed, and that I wasn't the only person to Cream, exactly, great song. But I wasn't exactly the only person feeling like no matter how hard I worked, I just can't seem to make it. And so this is where my journey in community engagement and advertising started. So the podcast is called Mixed Company Podcast, and it is about the lack of diversity in advertising, primarily from the perspective of, I would say, what we call the bottom up, right? So top down is usually your executives, the people, you know, if you're at a startup, the folks signing your check, the big dogs wearing the suits. And that just wasn't me, and my co-hosts. We, to this day, are some of the most laid back people, honest, truth-telling people with completely vulgar languages that you will ever meet. We cuss all day long and don't even realize it. I am straining right now to keep things clean for you all. But what we did is we figured, you know, we can't be the only ones experiencing advertising in this way that makes us feel like we would never become successful, that we would never grow past, at the time, Simeon was a copywriter, so a junior copywriter, that we would never get past being, at the time, a project manager, a producer, or an account executive, and that, you know, it was really tough to not see ourselves in the executive leadership, because we wanted to grow. Most people, even though I would say, you know, in the United States, they talk about the American dream, even though it has shifted in what it looks like, the goal still is to grow and to reach whatever the highest height you can reach. And at the time, we started feeling the remnants of these glass ceilings that everyone talks about. And we said that there've got to be more than just 3 of us that feel this way. So we started putting together our podcast, and we started just sharing it with our friends. It resonated with our friends, so they started sharing with their friends. Their friends started sharing it with their bosses and their managers and their teams. And what ended up happening is that people were really feeling what we were saying. So over time, we developed a bit of a fan base, and it's so weird to say fan base because regular people don't call people their fans. But we definitely developed a community around the conversations that we have on the podcast. And that started to become an extension of the day-to-day work I was still doing on the agency side. And what I found is that with having numbers, or people that listen to you and people that resonate with how you're feeling, I was able to advocate a lot more clearly and a lot more impactfully for things that I needed to succeed in this business, and also things that my peers were needing in this business as well. A couple of years down the line, and by a couple of years, I meant by 2018, while still doing the podcast and also writing for my own personal blog, which is called My Life of Kai. It's similar content. I got to this point in my career where I felt like I'm just tired. I'm tired of advocating. I'm tired of repeating myself. I'm tired of people not listening. And so I quit my job, right? And I would never really suggest anybody do this, especially if you're in my situation where there is nothing to fall back on. There is, you know, mom and dad can't give you money. aunties can't really offer you that couch anymore. But I decided that it was better for my sanity to remove myself from what I felt to be toxic environments that I could not shift myself, to take a break and think about what it is that I could do for a career that would not have me going home with migraines and chest pains like I was 75 years old. And during those 5 months, one of the things that I discovered is that I love my podcast. I love the skill sets of being a producer. I'm really great with project management, and I need to figure out a way to tie all of that together. Fast forward exactly a year later, after that, I fell into this role at WPP for community engagement, which literally ties the idea of being organized as a project manager, as creative and well connected as a producer, and this idea of activism together to essentially help to raise the platforms, challenges, and perspectives of employees within the WPP community to those in leadership so that they can make more well-informed decisions for policies, as well as their day-to-day engagements with employees or the boots on the ground. So that's the long way of giving you guys, this is Kai and this is community engagement. Back in at the top of 2019, our current CEO, Mark Reed, put together a new discipline called culture. If you know anything about advertising, culture is not necessarily the primary thing that everyone's worried about. Profit is. It's still a business. We still got to make money. And so culture and people's existence within the industry suffered as a result. However, our CEO felt that, time's moving along. We need to try something different. People are quitting at a rapid basis. We're hemorrhaging money at the seams. How can we do a better job of saving some of that money? And one of the ways you can save money is by not replacing your employees every 12 to 18 months. So it became a discipline that focused on figuring out how to retain people. And so my boss, who's an amazing woman that you guys can Google and search on LinkedIn, her name is Judy Jackson, said to herself and others, I know this, she calls me an agitator, but she says, I know this woman, she's an agitator, she tells it like it is, and she's really good with building community. Let's get her in here. And so since November of 2019, I have been in this role. So that's my story. That's how I got to community engagement. But the main thing that I'm supposed to talk to you guys about today, and let me check the chat. By all means, if you guys have questions, thanks for the reps for HU, Midwest, Shaolin, Cream, all of that. But if you guys have actual questions, throw them in the chat. I can answer them as I go.
I have a quick question.
What's up? It's Greta. Is that it, Gretel?
Yeah, Gretel.
Hi,
yeah.
Gretel.
Hi. I was going to ask, it's something that I've been discussing a lot with, or has been in discussions a lot with other mate interns, and it's like, how do you not let people pigeonhole you into D&I type things, but also standing strong and advocating for yourself and the other people of color in the room? How do you make sure that you're not forced into things that you're it's not part of your job and you're being forced to because of who you are, but also being able to stand strong, advocate for people in the room, and just make sure you're not kind of stepped over because of who you are?
Fantastic. So it's a good question because that's what I'm about to get into. So hopefully I'm able to answer that in the next 5 minutes for you so that it makes sense. So the 3 things I wanted to talk to you guys about is defining and creating community, networking and building relationships, and of course, creating sustaining engagement. Gretel, the primary thing that you are asking me, as far as I'm concerned, is the skill of community engagement. It's an art, right? Everybody thinks it's easy to make friends. Well, not me, but a lot of people think it's easy to make friends. A lot of people think community engagement is just throwing a bunch of parties, and it's a little bit more than that. I think the challenge from my perspective is if you asked me 2 years ago if I would work on a culture side and inclusion and diversity, I would have told you, hell no, those people don't do nothing. And I've stood by that for a long time, right? And it's very offensive to others, but who's gonna say it if I don't say it? The reality is, what I know about myself is that I have developed a skill for making the work that we're doing a product and not just the feeling, right? In diversity and inclusion, a lot of times what we focused on is the trainings, a lot of the non-bias trainings. A lot of times we focused on the happy hours, making sure that we throw parties for, you know, it's June, so it's Pride. We got to make sure we have a Pride party. It's February, it's Black History Month. We got to make sure we have a Black History party. And that's not it. That's not what inclusion's about. Inclusion is about the community. Inclusion is about providing an experience and creating an environment for people to thrive, and then working with those people within that community to ensure that their goals are sustained so that they can continue to feel like they belong, right? And that's what I do. So I'll start with how to define community. The first thing about defining community is understanding that wherever there are people, there is a community. So if you want to work in community engagement, whether it's in advertising, politics, the medical fields, whatever, you literally got to be like Ariel from The Little Mermaid. You have to be where the people are. It's literally that is the root of the work that I do. Wherever there are people, there are communities. The next piece that you need to have a really good concept of is understanding that people are not a monolith. In the conversation of inclusion, you constantly hear people saying, you know, women are not monoliths. Black people are not monoliths. Specifically in the Black community, you know, it's important to identify that you have people that identify as African American, Caribbean American, Latinx. There are people that identify as none of the above and all of the above. And that what that means is that it's the nuance that's important to understand. And the only way you get to understand nuance is through research. And the best way to do research, for those of you that may still be in school or are fresh out of it, is through your primary sources, right? You got to talk to people. You got to read thought leadership pieces. You got to read the newspaper, no matter how biased it may be. It doesn't matter if you agree with it. The goal is to understand the concepts and the ideas that exist within these communities, and then structure them into understanding what the micro communities are within that community. If you think about it like high school, which often helps me in my work, when you get into a high school, it's a student body. But when you get into that student body, people are separated into classrooms. And when you get into those classrooms, those people are separated into how they identify themselves. So you've identified me as a senior in high school in this township or in this school district, but I identify myself as my first, my middle, my last name of this family in this neighborhood who does these certain things that represent me. And it's really about getting to the granular piece of who people are and why what they identify as and why they identify as that from a non-biased perspective. Yeah, I can tell you what I think. I can tell you who I think you are, but that's not important. You have to tell me who you think you are and what's important to you. The next step in defining community is even more so, in addition to understanding those communities, is to start to familiarize yourself with the languages. And I'm not necessarily talking about appropriation, because, you know, I'll be the first person to tell you, like, yes, I'm a hip hop head, but if you're not a hip hop head and you come at me and start to throw some Jay-Z lyrics from 1992, I'm gonna look at you crazy. That's just not how you speak. What I'd rather you do is just understand where I'm coming from, understand the language, the tone, the experience, and again, the historical context. Why is this important? Specifically, we are recognizing Pride this month, and there are, in the conversation of gender, I think a lot of people who would identify themselves as allies even have a hard time with understanding the concept that gender is non-binary, that there are people who identify with more than just either being a man or being a woman, and that there are various cross sections within that. I don't necessarily need to come out and give all of the LGBTQ plus jargon as an ally to prove I'm an ally, or to prove that I understand, or I'm learning rather to understand this community. But I do need to familiarize myself with how this community speaks to each other, so that when we are having conversations, I'm able to have a more authentic and more relaxed conversation, and also open my mind to learn more about these people. Community engagement is not just about giving knowledge. It's not about telling people what to do. It's about learning as much about people so that you can help give them platform when you engage them. Does that make sense? Does anybody have questions or thoughts about that?
Yes. Hi.
Hey.
Um,
Olga. Hi, Olga.
Olga, yeah. Hi. I need to rename myself. I know it's really hard. So I just like a question. So how to understand it better? By like reading the literature, watching movies, like listening to music and stuff, or it's like me asking my friends, like from different backgrounds, the questions on a regular basis about their experiences, because I'm kind of lost. Would love to be as much as I can rounded in terms of cultures, and also because I didn't grow up here. Do you have any tips?
Yes, and that's actually my next part. So I'm moving into the next part, which is networking and building relationships. And I'll start by answering your question, Olga. The answer is you got to do all of the above. And that seems like a lot. When you think about it from an academic standpoint, it's like, textbooks, reading more than 140 characters, having tough conversations. And yes, as a millennial, I identify as lazy, and I'm fine with that. But it's not about learning everything today. If you want to engage a community, you need to understand that your job is not to know everything all the time at once. It is a journey, it's a progression, and it's about building relationships with people in these communities, and at the offset to also build relationships with the communities. So build the relationships with people in the communities directly, and then with the communities as you continue along your journey. So there's two things that come in handy when starting your career, and both of these things are extremely handy in the, I guess, what would I call this, a discipline? I don't know, in the job of being a community engagement person. And that's networking and building relationships, right? Everybody tells you when you're an intern, hell, everybody tells you all the time, you gotta network. It's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And I think that is true, but I also feel like we have to do a better job of explaining what that means, right? Because when you think of networking, you think of business cards, if any of you guys remember what those were. I know we have LinkedIn now, but there were business cards, there are meet and greets. You go find somebody, you tell them who you are, you shake their hand, you give them their business card. And that is not, to me, that can be networking, but that's not necessarily adding anything to your network. And I think that the difference between just networking and adding people to your network is the relationship piece. I can introduce myself to all 52 of you that are on this call right now, and you can walk away and never remember me, right? I can walk away and not remember any of you. And that's not the goal. The goal is not just to introduce yourself to people who are going to forget you, because that's a waste of time. And you probably wanted to spend those 5 minutes, I don't know, getting the shot from a bar or something else. You have to make it meaningful, right? When you introduce yourself, the networking piece is just the expansion of your network, like I said, but it's the building the relationship that makes it more impactful. That's how the communities are expanded. And what does that mean? Building relationships is, in addition to who do you know, how well do you know them, and how well do they know you? To me, that's a reciprocation of being vulnerable. You have to be willing to share something about yourself. What's the takeaway from this conversation? There's the saying where it's not, people might not remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. right? And it's about giving people the opportunity to feel you, and also having a moment to learn enough about somebody else so that you feel them. These are soft skills that I'm talking about. I'd love to be able to write these on my resume one day, but I don't think that everyone understands these concepts. So when we're speaking, when I'm reaching out to you after we've met, after we've networked, after I've collected your business card, what's our conversation like? Is it a whole conversation of me just asking you 5 questions? You know, how'd you get to be where you are? What's your favorite color? Do you like coffee? Can I get a job? Or are you also offering, you know, this is who I am. This is why I'm here. This is what I've read about you, so that that person can respond to it with, I'm so glad you read that about me. This is why I wrote that. And then you're building conversation. And that conversation expands to another conversation, especially if it goes well. I don't know if any of you do these app dates. I'm terrible at them, but it's the same. It's the difference between the person that says good morning to you every day for 42 days straight, and the person that goes even deeper and asks you, you know, why such and such is your favorite TV show, and then builds conversation around that why. Because those are the people that you're going to remember. It's also about understanding that you don't, especially in the community engagement side, I'm not going to speak to you because I need something from you. I just want to talk to you. Olga, to your point, that's learning a little more. You know, I have this question about this thing that I read. You know, I'm not sure who to go to it with. Do you mind if I ask you that question? And can you share with me more of your thoughts? It's about remembering someone's birthday. Hey, I just saw on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, it's your birthday, wishing you happy birthday. You don't need to respond, just letting you know I was thinking about you. Because what kinds of people do you want to build relationships with? People that just want to be around you for you, not people that just want to use you for what you have, right? And networking can sometimes feel very transactional and very one way, and almost like people are using you. As we're building relationships, kind of like making friends. And I'd like to, you know, give my perspective that I'd like to remove the myth that you have to, that you can't have friends in business. That's not true. In fact, the people that you start to build strong relationships with, that you do consider your friend, even if it's just in the context of a workplace or an industry, are going to be the people that support you for a longer period of time on your career journey. I will stop there. Does that make sense? I think I saw a couple things. Going to gay bars or pride bars, you can literally talk to anyone and everyone. They don't hold back, and they tell you how it is in life. Yes, some people are like that. I wouldn't say all. I have come across people that aren't necessarily willing to share their perspective, but also I can respect that. If I ask you something and you don't necessarily want to teach me in that moment, that is okay. No harm, no foul. That's just not your point. Also, history research, knowing what has happened. Yep, that's definitely something you could do. Gretel, so you got to try to be friends and not have networking as just your main goal. Exactly. You can feel that when people just want to get something from you. And Olga, I do all of that, but also any book someone can recommend to read about your culture. Olga, I think I can put my contact information in there later, but I can provide some suggestions.
Yeah, definitely, because right now there's so many books, and when you open up, like, especially I want to read a lot about like African American culture. I studied history, I know the history, I have a lot of friends and stuff, so on, but would like to know more, and there's too many, and you cannot like even understand which are like really the particular one you. So maybe if you can help me with that one, it would be very helpful.
About Black history?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can make some recommendations. I can make some recommendations to you. The Miseducation of the Negro is a great one to start from the 1800s, and that will tell you all types of things. And the history that you thought you knew is not the history that you really need to know. Also, the New York Times Project 1619 has podcasts, literature, as well as articles that you can read. But I can send that to you later.
I love that podcast.
Lovely.
That's a good one.
Nicole is good. Nicole Hannah-Jones, she knows all the things. The last thing that I was going to tell you guys about, because I am conscious of time, is creating and sustaining engagement. And this is going a little bit further beyond the building relationships, right? Because there's the building relationships, which I think is the personal piece of it. But when looking at this as a job, like everything I'm saying to you guys, these are things that I do in my personal life, but also they apply to my job. And the main thing is when you're creating engagement that can live beyond the moment, it lies in a few things. The first thing is being empathetic, right? So whatever you are learning, allow yourself grace to be wrong, but also allow yourself grace to understand that the way we feel about something today is not necessarily how people are going to feel about it tomorrow. Prime example, we've gone through times up, or we are going through, we continue to go through this culture that we're calling times up culture, where, you know, we cancel people who engage, oh man, here goes my bell, who engage in, let's say, sexual misconduct in the workplace. There was a time where people did not consider that a terrible thing. I think we've always considered it a bad thing, but it was just part of going to work. As a woman, you may be harassed. As a woman, you may get passed over for promotions. And that's just how it is. That's literally how people thought about life years ago, right? Today, that's not the case. You will lose your job for saying the wrong thing to a woman. And if you allow yourself grace to understand that how people perceive culture changes, you will open yourself up to allow more conversations to happen and to continue to follow along with culture. And I'm not saying anything's bad or good. We shouldn't be necessarily in the community engagement space. We shouldn't be considering things in black and white. It's a lot of gray area, and things change and evolve so much that we just need to allow ourselves space to continue to be a part of the conversation, not from a judgmental space all the time, but definitely from a place of knowledge. I won't say understanding, I'll say knowledge. The other thing I like to do is creating content. And I think, especially now that we are in the space of, you know, the whole world is digital and it's a global world, where in order to scale your perspective and the things that you're learning, and the things that you've read about, you have to create a way to share it. I've done this through the podcast. Within the space of WPP, I do this through what I call a content share, not to be confused with a newsletter, because it's not always news that I'm sharing, but just content and cool things that I see that are happening around the world or within our WPP community that I think people need to see. And that content share gets sent out to anyone within the network who's a part of my distribution list or my community that I have direct access to. Creating sustaining engagement, it's a lot of physical work too. And by physical work, I mean you need to show up for your community. So you can't just come into the community to ask them to tell you about yourself. You have to be the one to show up at a happy hour if anyone in your community is throwing one. If anybody needs an ear or somebody to talk to, it becomes emotional labor too. I need to be able to provide an ear. I need to, as an individual and a professional, be a safe space so that people can understand that they are being heard and can feel that as well. The next piece is through activism. And I know a lot of people are speaking about allyship these days. And I think the biggest thing that people miss is that allyship isn't for you as the ally. It's about people that need your alliance to sustain. And so that means that there are going to be, and there have been, a lot of challenges within the advertising industry that also seeps into WPP, that although I don't experience it, it doesn't mean that I can't speak up on its behalf and share that perspective. My job is to make sure that other people are being seen and heard. That is my job every day, is to provide space, opportunity, and platform for these communities that I am engaging with on a day-to-day basis to be able to share their needs, thoughts, and dreams with the people that run the companies that they have to exist within. And in order to ensure that happens, I have to be that sponsor at the table. I have to be the one that gathers all of that information and shares it with the powers that be, if you will. I have to be able to speak truth to power, even if that truth is not all the time my truth. And for me, that is where I feel community engagement lies. So if I could distill what my role is in the work that I do, I'm just the person that tries to make friends and tries to make sure that my friends are heard. Because if I didn't look at my community members as friends and I just looked at them as people, I may not necessarily be able to form a bond, an emotional bond with them. This job, for those of you that feel, you know, you want to do something that has more purpose than just your skill, the purpose beyond your skill becomes that emotional labor. And that's where community engagement comes in. I'm a producer and a project manager with a heart. And I use that heart to help people within the WPP community. So that is my spiel. It's 1:33. There are a couple more.
Hi.
Hey, Erica. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I have been listening to the session as I apologize to those of you all. I'm not as vocal this time because my daughter is 16 and she is trying to get her learner's permit today. So I've been listening, and Kai, I just want to say the gems you just dropped, you know, not to even go there, but the gems that you and Jad both dropped today, I have to tell you, just amazing. Wish I had people like you steering my pathway when I was, you know, coming into the industry. I think that's what we're seeing that's changing is, you know, you really have to have that pathway. You have to have people cheering you along that pathway, and you have to have people that are clearing the road. And I can say that you and Jad both are all of those to the interns that are lucky enough to be on this call. So thank you very much for taking time out of your really, really busy schedule for being here. Also, you were a I'm Part fellow in our fellowship program.
That's
and
correct.
you know, we don't have all time to talk about that, but you know, Kai has been an integral part of the club. She supports us, we support her, and I just really want to thank everyone, but I really want to thank you guys for spending that time today. And if people would like to connect, would LinkedIn be the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is cool. I am dropping all my things in the chat right now. You guys can connect with me at My Life of Kai on everything. That's Instagram. That's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And then you can also email me. I'm dropping that as well. Lawson@WPP.com. You can check out Mixed Company at mixedcompanypodcast.com, or check out my blog at mylifeofkai.com. Those are all the things. And I hope it's helpful. It's a really different kind of job. It's not as in-depth as I know a lot of the people that you are speaking to, but I do believe that the work that I'm doing is integral to this industry and to all of you and your experiences. So if you ever want to chat, reach out. Forgive me in advance if it takes a while for me to respond. I try to respond within a week, just because I got to prioritize the things they pay me for, because it is rent that I got to pay. But I am definitely here, and I will definitely get to you.
All right, everybody, that's a wrap. What is this, week 4?
Yep.
Week
This is
4.
week 4.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
It was
guys.
nice to meet you all. Peace out. Take care.
Thank you so much, Kai. I think she's gone.